What's up? Welcome back to the shop. In today's video we're going to be making a knife with these 3mm ball bearings. So in this cup I have approximately 20,000 of these. They came in individual packages of like 300. So I've already gone ahead and cut them out and put them into this cup, and we're going to be using it for our canister. So if you've been keeping along, as of late I've been doing a lot of ball bearing videos, and I ordered these specifically for that. But I got curious and I wanted to see if I could make a different pattern if I use these smaller ones versus the bigger ones that I normally get. Really, I'm not sure if I'm going to get a different pattern, but I'll definitely have a different process versus my usual process, and you'll see down the video what I'm talking about. So as per the standard, I already have my canister already painted on the inside with white spray paint to make sure I get a nice clean release. And I am using some steel powder with some nickel content in it to be able to get that pop and that contrast that I want from the ball bearings, which are 52-100. And as I had stated before, the canister, or I mean the cup that I had roughly 20,000 ball bearings in it. So I used a little bit under half, so about 10,000 ball bearings to be able to do this canister. And I want to believe that's probably the most ball bearings I've ever used in a canister. Obviously this is going to make more than one knife. Material wise, I'm going to have more than enough to make a whole knife. As per the usual, I have way more material than I need. I always end up using about half of it. So here I'm working on my canister. As always, I forge top down and then I forge out my edges. That way I can get the canister to pop. And as you can see right there, when the seal broke, I had a lot of ball bearings falling out. And an extreme, obscene amount of ball bearings falling out. And that is because nothing on the inside actually forge welded. I have a few chunks that did stick. They're rather small and they're coming out in clumps of probably like 5 or 10. But for the most part, none of it really stuck together. Which is really a shame, because when you put a monetary value on it, that's probably over $30 worth of material I just lost. But I mean, you can't put a price on learning, can you? Even though it does hurt a little bit. Alright guys, so let's go over my little mistake here. So I only had a small piece that actually did kind of grab on, and some other smaller chunks. But the majority of this, as you can see, is separate ball bearings. So I'm gonna assume that the powder that I put in there, just because these ball bearings are so small that the space that they have in between is so tiny, it's hard for the powder to get in. So that's gonna be the assumption that I'm gonna make for this. So I think I'm gonna try a different method, because I still have some more and I have another can already spray painted and everything. So I'm going to try a different method and see if this works, and hopefully it does. If not, I mean, just here we're talking about like $35 worth of material, maybe 40 because of propane. So that's a big bummer, but I'm gonna give it another try, and hopefully the second time it does work. Ooh. You can see inside this canister, you can't really tell, but I'm gonna rip off this back piece and I'm gonna show you something I see. Okay, so I lied. I couldn't get it off, but you can see towards the end, it's a lot smoother, and then towards probably 2/3 of it, it looks a lot rougher. And that's because that first quarter is what actually got the powder, and you can see all the way around it, it's a lot smoother, and that's where the stuck part was actually at. The rest of it, oh, that's a good angle. The rest of it was all just separate ball bearings. So I'm assuming that I had a lot of negative space because the powder just didn't make it down there. And that very bottom part is where this guy stuck. That's why you have a smooth finish versus just all the ball bearings separately. So we're going to go ahead and make our next canister and cross our fingers and hope it works. So for this second attempt, I'm going to try something a little bit different. I'm filling in my canister about 3/4 of the way through. And once it's full, I'm going to put them into a separate cup. And in that cup, I'm going to be mixing it with some powder. I believe that the reason I didn't get a solid weld is because I couldn't get the powder all the way down. Since these smaller ball bearings are, well, smaller, it's kind of hard for the powder to actually go all the way down to the bottom. So I figured that I would pre-mix it and then put it in. Which, I mean, is common sense, like one of those dumb moments that if it didn't get in, might as well just put it in from the beginning. But it's one of those where I never had that issue, so this is the first time I run into that issue, and I had to fix it after messing up the other billet. Another thing to note is I always like to put in a couple of spoonfuls of powder on the bottom just as sacrificial steel, because the ends always end up getting messed up, and so I'd rather put a little bit of steel powder and just cut that off and scrap it versus getting rid of the actual good material with the ball bearings in it that give us the pattern that we want. And with that, all that's left to do is seal it up, weld it, and put it in the fire, and hopefully, cross our fingers, this time it actually does grab on. If not, we have another issue. As always, top to bottom first, make sure we get a nice solid weld. Now, when I did press this one, I felt a little bit different versus the other one. The other one felt like I had a lot of negative space inside and kind of like softer, and so it collapsed more. Versus this one, I pressed it and I felt like it had solidified a lot faster versus the other one. And as you can see with the cap off, it's a nice solid billet. So that pretty much answers that question as to why I wasn't able to get a solid weld. And one thing to note, these ball bearings are chrome plated. So these little balls all have a chrome plating on the outside that is for corrosion reasons and to help keep them nice and slick and whatnot. So they don't like to weld. It's like that's chrome is what makes stainless steel stainless, and stainless steel doesn't like to weld to anything. So that chrome really is what keeps the ball bearings from welding. If the ball bearings didn't have the chrome and I just forge welded like that, they would have stuck together. They would have become just a solid mass of 52-100 steel, but they would have stuck together nonetheless. And I have stuck together just the ball bearings to each other, but that plating kind of just burns off and doesn't really do much. But I have to get a lot hotter and a lot more pressure than I do when I just do these regular ones with the powder steel in it. And even then, it's a 50-50 whether it's going to grab or not. So with my billet forged out roughly where I want it, I'm just going to straighten it out so we can check it out. And with the end piece cut off, you can really see the grain on the inside, which is just all those individual ball bearings. But it's really nice to appreciate how you can actually see all the individual ball bearings in there, and it almost looks like 3D, even though if you touch it, it's just flat. It's a very, very cool effect, and I thought it was really cool. That's why I wanted to show you guys. So now that I have ensured that the steel is exactly the way I want it, all that's left to do is forge out a bar to be able to start the forging of our knife. I like to forge it down to about 1/4 thickness and then start the actual forging of the knife. Here I'm doing something a little different. I'm actually using the press to try to put in the tip for no particular reason other than the fact I wanted to see if I could actually do it with the press. Normally it's easy to over press, but this time it came out pretty nice. Here I ran into another issue, and that is that my cutting die bent in half. It was supposed to be just a temporary guy, but I ended up using it a lot longer because it didn't break. So I'm gonna go on ahead and stop my project and make a new cutting die with this piece of mild 1-inch thick plate. Now the reasons why I'm using this piece of 1-inch steel plate is because I don't want it to bend again. For the purpose of cutting, it doesn't really need to be a high carbon steel or anything like that. I mean, it would be preferred to be a better resistant steel, but for the amount of work that I'm doing, it doesn't really matter. I don't actually forge a lot. I do 3-4 knives a month, so it doesn't really matter all that much. This is gonna last me for forever and a half, and if I have any issues, I'll just grind it back a little bit more and I'll be back to very good steel for my cutting purposes. So I'm confident this is going to be plenty robust for what I need. I'm just putting almost like a wedge shape with a teardrop to it. That way it's going to be able to last as long as possible. And after doing my initial bevel with the 2x72, I finish it off with a hard disc. So here I'm cutting off the piece that bent on the old plate. And honestly, I should have just cut a new plate, but I wanted to reuse this one. But it took me forever to get it nice and clean and flush so I could weld this piece onto it. Which, in hindsight, I could have just cut a new piece. I have plenty of material there. But I don't like to waste material if I don't have to. Hey guys, I'd like to talk about today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. If you're not aware what a VPN service is, it is a service that allows you to keep your online privacy and data safe by allowing you to encrypt your internet connection and masking your IP address and location to keep your information safe from hackers online. One thing that I specifically like is Surfshark has a virus cleaner that is periodically checking to make sure you have no viruses on your phone and that no malware has been uploaded, as well as making sure that you don't have any random ads popping up while you're browsing the internet. They also don't store or monitor any of the information that you are browsing online to make sure to keep your privacy. One cool little thing about Surfshark is that a VPN also allows you to be able to access region-gated content. Now, what is region-gated content? Region-gated content is content that you can't access through your normal server. So let's say you're browsing Netflix. The show that you want to watch on Netflix isn't available here in the United States because there are different contracts out for different regions in the world. So you can use a VPN like Surfshark to be able to connect to a server in the United Kingdom, and it allows you to access that show there in the United Kingdom in case you can't access it here in America. And you can do that for pretty much most countries in the world. All you have to do is scroll up, find the United Kingdom, click on it, and in a few seconds you're redirected to that server and you're good to go. So if you're interested in checking out Surfshark, you can go to surfshark.com/JPS and you can enjoy an extra 4 months for a very great price, as well as there is a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there is no risk in using Surfshark VPN. If you like it, keep it. If you don't, get rid of it. But I personally use it every day on my phone and on my household devices as well. So if you're interested in checking it out for yourself, the link is in the description down below, surfshark.com/JPS. Thank you very much to Surfshark for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to our build. So it's time to try this new puppy out, and it works like a charm. Get a nice clean cut. Because I had already pressed it with the other one, I had a flat spot on one side which caused it to buckle up whenever I pressed it with the press, but other than that, it cut very nicely. And I know some people are going to say, well, why don't you just cut it on the bandsaw if you let it cool down? Well, if I didn't do it now, I probably would never get to making that die because I'm just going to stop or find an excuse or whatever. And so it wouldn't become a hassle down the line. I decided to just take the time and remake it while I had the chance. But I definitely considered going the route of just cutting it on the bandsaw since I already had cooled down the steel anyways. So with my material portioned out, it's time to start forging out my actual knife, and I'm starting with my preform, which means I'm forging the tip downward. That way whenever I forge in my bevels, I'll get that natural curve that I want. And here I'm just gonna start portioning out whatever I want to use from my tank. I am planning on doing a hidden tank for this knife, so I ended up portioning a little bit more than I needed, but I'm still trying to learn how to, portion control my way through that. And it is a lot more difficult than it seems to have to decide how much steel you need on the fly. But I ended up having more than enough for the knife and for the blade and tang and all that stuff, so it's good to have more than necessary. Here I had this one issue where the clip on the other side of my hydraulic press fell out and I did not notice, so it ended up just slowly slipping out as I used it, and eventually slipped all the way out and the press stayed stuck where it was at. It wasn't too much of an issue. I just had to go find the clip on the floor and put it back in, but that clip has been giving me issues on multiple occasions, so I think I'm gonna have to invest and go buy some new clips to put on there so it has a nice tighter fit. But I just haven't done it because realistically it's not really a big of an issue. It's something that happens every few months maybe. So now that I have the preform roughly where I want it and my tang is forged out, I'm going to start on getting the width for my knife. As you know, I like to get my nice tall heel, so I'm forging it out, going for about 2 1/4. And before, when I used to do this, I used to use the hydraulic press because it really was the only way I could do it. I did have the Harbor Freight hammer that I had modified for the specific occasion, but it really pales in comparison to an actual hammer forged out for this. And it is not an understatement to say that before I really didn't like doing this, but ever since I got this hammer, I definitely enjoy this part of the build, and like I enjoy watching the steel move like Play-Doh, and it's quite satisfying to do. So hopefully here in the near future I can get some more tools and hopefully bring up my hand forging game a little bit more. I've been really wanting to invest in getting a really nice dog head hammer. If you don't know what a dog head hammer is, it's like the Japanese hammer that has the longer front portion. For reference, if you watched any of Neo Kamimura's forging videos, he likes to use dog heads for his forging. And I've always wanted to get one and see if it is better or if it's not, or if it's just a different learning curve to be able to use one. I know it's going to be front heavy, but that could be a benefit in its own right, since it should, in theory, hit harder and hit better. So with the knife roughly fully forged, all I have to do is some minor touches to it, getting all the bigger hammer marks out and forging in the tip a little bit better, because right now it's a little bit more rounded than I like, and make sure everything is nice and straight. And after that, I'll let it cool down overnight in the forge. Alright guys, so while the knife is slowly cooling down, this is the piece, the other half that I ended up cutting off of it, the excess, and I'm curious to see what it looks like. So I'm going to clean this off, clean off one of the faces, maybe one of the sides. Sides seem kind of beat up though, but we got a pretty nice section right here, and I'm gonna etch it to see what we're working with. Since I had to do the billet multiple times, I didn't really have enough time to finish this knife all in one go how I normally do. But still, I want to show you guys what the pattern looks like on this billet. So I wanted to clean it up and do a quick acid etch. Alright guys, so this is what the pattern's looking like on this particular billet. Once it's forged out, it's obviously going to look different. But it's really interesting to see all those little polka dots. It's pretty much the same thing as I get with the other ball bearings, but in this case it's a lot tighter. If I had pressed it downward in a canoe style instead of the canister that I did, I'm pretty sure I would have gotten a similar result to the copper knife that I made. But for this case, I wanted to see if I got anything different whenever I did the whole billet in a canister, how I normally do. And normally a lot of this is like lost towards the tips, but because I put a whole bunch of, well, not even a whole bunch, it was a couple spoons of the 15 to 20 powder in the end, it acts as a little stopper to keep it from getting mixed in over there and getting damaged on the end, so we can keep as much of our usable material. But yep, it's looking like a promising knife. And here is our actual knife. And in it, if you look closely, you can see those ball bearings starting to come out, that the different layers in there. And that's coming out through the scale. I don't know why, but the scale reacts differently with the different steels. So actually leaves a little indentation in there of what it's like. But that's all the time I have for this video. In the next video, I'll be finishing off this knife and getting all the final work done. But unfortunately, I ran out of time for this video. But as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.